Welcome to the Talking Halos podcast. This is Derek Ciapola with my co-host, my partners in crime, Negative Nate Green, and the newly shackled, now dawning, the ring of death. I mean, the ring of happiness, the wedding ring. Jared Timms, welcome back, man. How was the honeymoon?
It was great. Fun time. Good to take time off work. I miss recording the podcast, of course, but I didn't watch too much baseball either. But it was good. It was fun.
I would even mention missing the podcast. There would be other things I'm focusing on for my honeymoon besides missing a podcast.
I got a lot. I got to eat a lot.
Are you serious?
Seafood. I got to eat a lot of seafood. Love some seafood. I went up the coast, went up to Santa Barbara. That was it. Nothing too crazy.
And it's all you're talking about is seafood. And Nate, what's missing here? You have a bride. I'm sure she's a lovely bride. You're a married man. You're going to spend the rest of your life together, and you're not talking about that. Seafood.
It's baseball season, baby.
So you didn't watch much baseball.
She doesn't. Yeah.
Nate, jump in here anytime.
He did. No, he did. Trust me. I know because I know him. So.
All right. Yeah. Well, you missed out, sir, on some good baseball and some bad baseball. This is kind of like Jekyll and Hyde. This team has been recently last weekend. And we're sorry, folks, that we were away longer we wanted to be. It's not just Jared being gone and not providing proper training for poor Nate to run a video podcast, but also because we did record a podcast and something happened to it. We don't know what happened. I think a gremlin hit it. Maybe the baseball gods thought, oh my gosh, this was a horrible episode where Ciapola talked way too much fantasy sports and that was it. I don't know, but it didn't save. And now here we are missing out on some valuable time. But let's talk about some positives. Angels take 2 out of 3 from the White Sox, destroying one of their better pitchers, Lance Lynn, to end the series. Nate, take us in positively today. What did you see that was good about the Angels in the last 3 games? I mean, I don't know if we want to talk about the Marlins series at all.
Yeah, 2 out of 3 against the White Sox, which is good. They hit Kopech around, which they kind of hit him around, bunch of strikeouts, but they were able to score some runs against him, which was good. But yeah, the offense exploded against Lance Lynn, and Lynn's been kind of one of those. Lance Lynn's been one of those guys who just kind of goes out there and just gives you 6 innings every time out, and the Angels were able to hit him around, so that was good. Got to see Ben Joyce. Ben Joyce looked really, really good. Looks like Taylor Ward might be starting to find his swing a little bit. And yeah, it looks like there are some positive things with this team coming up.
Jared.
Ben Joyce, very, very good. I'm going to talk prospects, of course. Ben Joyce, very good. Bachman, we'll see how that develops. I don't want to harp on it, but bullpen usage. Oh my God. I'm not going to harp on it. I don't want to talk about bullpen usage. The Angels won the series. I don't want to talk. I said I don't want to talk about the bullpen usage. I'm just not going to talk about it.
Well, that's not helpful. Give a cliff notes at least as to where you're at with that. Just a cliff notes.
Why are you going to Silseth in a 6-3 game that you're losing? Why? I mean, it's not like they did it in the Marlins series too. The entire Marlins series. I know you don't want to go back that far. They had a chance to win a couple of those games for sure, 1-run games, and they just make bad bullpen decisions. I don't know who to blame. If it's Phil, if it's Perry, if it's Taman, if it's somebody else, Hazel. I don't know who it is, but I'm gonna probably continue to harp on this because I'm not understanding the bullpen decisions. Nate, can you back me up on that one? You agree with this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why Silseth pitched in that situation either. I mean, Tucker Davidson hadn't really thrown in a while. Sam Bachman was available. He threw 1 inning, and you figure a guy who hasn't really pitched too much in the major league level, it's like, hey, you're going to come up and you're going to be a long reliever to start. We'll give you a couple innings here, a couple innings there. And no, it's just mind blowing to watch the way they use this bullpen. It has been, I don't know, the whole year watching them. I mean, watching them use Aaron Loop in clutch situations early on was just the best thing in the world. I loved watching that. And then, yeah, just going back to it and like, hey, let's have this guy come in, get 2 outs, and then we're going to run him back out there and hope he can pitch for 3 outs when he's never done this before in his life. So, good. I don't know. It's the way they do things.
Positives, though. Ben Joyce is really freaking good.
Very good.
I think there's a lot to like in that Destroyed podcast, by the way, Jared. We really kind of annihilated that. I know we were all befuddled as to why in the world you bring in Chase Seth struggles through one inning, you bring him back out the next inning, he walks the first guy, and you still keep him in. He walks the second guy, and then and the game gets away from you. The decision making there is to me a huge concern, especially in right now a division that's tough. It's a tough division, but no one's really scaring you right now. Maybe the Rangers are a little bit offensively, but their pitching's not going to scare you. The Astros have some stuff going on. The Seattle's still trying to figure things out. There's not a whole lot that scares you in the division, and there's not a whole lot that scares you in the American League. The American League American Leagues are just going to beat each other up all season. So I really wish they would. I don't know what the word is in terms of bullpen management, but whatever it is right now, it's not working. And it concerns me because I think what's going to happen is we're going to see a repeat of 2019 where that bullpen is worn to crap by August, and then August is all falls apart. And when you have actually guys who can perform, but we won the top positives, and then that one came up, and Jared, how dare you bring that up? But we weren't going to let that go away. Other positives here, by the way, Shohei getting off the schneid offensively.
Yeah,
that's a positive.
Increasing his trade value.
Sorry, positive here. So yes, increasing trade value. It was nice to see not just the fact that he was swinging it better, but also he seemed happier. Honestly, you saw him come in with Kabuki on, does this whole thing at the end of his home run. There was definitely something to it, a little bit more joy from him. Trouty seems to be coming around a little bit too, but that comes to the question that we're going to ponder this more next week is this was White Sox pitching that has been up and down this year. And you had a series with the Marlins where their starting pitching can be at times elite. And there's a difference there. And I want us to we're going to come back this a week from now on the podcast. Because the Cubs come in next week. That's an average pitching team versus the Mariners, who by all accounts, their pitching is very, very good. And I want to compare this because can the Angels hit good pitching? And we want to answer that question. We saw last weekend, no. The White Sox
didn't really help answer the question.
No, it doesn't. But
one other positive note: Neto playing outstanding defense at shortstop. It's been huge, saving game one. I truly believe that if he doesn't make that play in game one, the White Sox probably come back and win it the way Estevez was looking. So yeah, it's been good to see the Angels have a true shortstop. I know it was something I harped on all offseason was, hey, they don't have a true shortstop. We don't know when Neto's going to be ready. Luckily, Neto is ready a little bit earlier than people thought. And he's been able to play shortstop at a very high level. So that's huge too.
Well, let me ask you just this question. Thinking back to when Simba was here, okay, and he was playing short, and then watching him comparing it to defensively, we're not there offensively, but defensively, how Neto plays it. What goes through your mind? How do you compare the two?
Go ahead, Jared.
Andrelton Simmons is the modern day Ozzie Smith, so that's tough to compare it to. But I mean, Neto's a damn good defender. I mean, there's a reason why he was a 60, 65 grade defender in the minors, end of the draft. And it doesn't surprise me that he's playing good defense. I'd love to see the bat come around a little bit more. He's a very, very good hitter. But I mean, all scouting reports had him sticking at shortstop. So it doesn't surprise me, but yeah, he's playing really, really good defense. And I mean, I think it just shows how badly the Angels need a shortstop, right? I mean, it just proves right there, and they're playing good baseball right now. I mean, they're playing okay baseball. I wouldn't say good baseball, playing okay baseball, 2 games above 500 in May. Your schedule gets a lot easier than it did in May too, here coming into June. So I think, you look at the spots up the middle and they're doing pretty good there. Catchers looking pretty good. Shortstop, we just talked about Zach Neto. He looks really good. Second base, still a little bit of a question mark. You don't know who you're putting there on a daily basis, but Gio Urshela looks, he's batting 300. Take that for what it's worth if you like batting average. And then you got the best player in baseball in center field. So up the middle looks good. You just got to worry about pitching, and you got to worry about that Fangraphs manager war.
Manager war. Fair enough. Nate?
Yeah,
Real
no,
quick.
it's tough to compare anyone to Andrelton Simmons the way he played. And I know he made some errors, Andrelton did, but most of those were balls that people couldn't get, like normal people couldn't get to, that he was getting to. But Neto's looked really good defensively. I don't want to start comparing him to Simmons right now. I think it's way too early to do this, but I think he's played really well, and I think what we've seen the last couple of years, it definitely is making things look a lot better, knowing like we saw Andrew Velasquez and David Fletcher at shortstop last year, and it's like Neto's hitting better than both those guys were, and he's playing better defense than both those guys were. So like it does help.
I think I'm not really trying to, in terms of compare in a way like this is who they are or were,
Mhm.
but it's very, memory slide. Like, we oftentimes remember what we saw originally. I mean, at the end. And at the end of Simba's tenure here, what we saw was a guy whose body was starting to break down. And, you kind of lose track of where a person was defensively before that. And here you got this young guy coming up, Neto, who, I mean, dude, some of the plays he's making, you don't see other team shortstop making these plays. You just don't. Not once in a while you see it, but Neto's making these plays consistently. And so that draws you back to the next best shortstop that they've had, and that is Simba. And it makes me think back to what he did. And I have to dismiss the memories of the end when he wasn't healthy. So that's why I'm asking that question, because I go back over the course of 20 years, and the Angels really haven't had a whole lot of great shortstops. 30 years. 30 years. Simba was the best. And then you have, I think Neto is going to be their shortstop for the next 10 years. That's what I believe. So then, but who else was there that blew
Ibar,
you away?
DeSarcina DeSarcina was an all-star 1 year with the Angels
1
at
year, yeah.
shortstop.
And
Yeah.
he couldn't hit for crap.
Yeah.
I remember him.
Ibar was
Yeah.
a league average shortstop, really good defender. Ibar was, did I say Ibar? I meant Simmons was
Yeah,
a
you
league
said Ibar.
Simmons was a league average hitter, really good defender. Ibar had his years as well. I mean, it's something that the Angels have always missed, though. You go back to what Jim Fregosi.
Mhm.
That's probably like Jim Fregosi is the best shortstop in Angels history, and that's probably the last time they had a really good shortstop. Eric Ibar, you could say that. I mean, he was very consistent there until the end. He was very consistent. He was consistently a good shortstop, never a leadoff hitter. It's somebody that you probably put in like the 9-hole, but consistent, and that's what you look for, and that's what Neto's been. It's been really consistent. Sure. Good.
And there are certain positions where the Angels historically have always struggled just finding somebody to fill. Second base, third base. Like I remember what you guys remember. Well, I'm not sure if you remember because I'm old as dirt, but I remember when Dallas McPherson came up and Troy Glaus moved on. And McPherson was supposed to be that guy, that next great guy, because Glaus had held it down and he was the one who really had been third base and one of only one person maybe in 25 years who managed third base. And McPherson fell apart. And then after that, we kept looking for a third base, looking for third base, and still looking for third base. And then hopefully Rendon was supposed to be that guy. And look at now. My point is traditionally you have positions that don't really work out for you for some reason. And yeah, here it feels like to me Neto is going to be that guy, barring a massive regression. And I'm loving it, man. I just use McDonald's thing. I'm loving it. But yeah. I digress. Anything else positives that we can take from, let's just say, the last week?
Ben Joyce looked good.
Ben Joyce looked great.
Canning threw the ball good enough to keep him in the game. I don't think he's an ace. I don't think he's a 2. He's a number 5 guy for me, but maybe a number 4. You could probably talk me into that, but he threw the ball well. I mean, that's 2 good outings in a row. Really good to see from him. 2 quality starts in a row, if I remember correctly. So Yeah, it's good to see someone in the starting pitching just start to get going. Jaime Barria was able to throw the ball well again. That's 2 starts in a row for him to kind of throw the ball well. But yeah, we really need to see Detmers and Anderson and Sandoval continue to take that next step because yeah, it's really like 2.5 guys. Otani's starting to throw the ball better too. He had a couple of rough outings, so starting pitching, I mean, we can talk about that until we're blue in the face, but good to see Canning and Berea throw the ball well.
Starting pitching, we've seen these guys fight through it. I think the one that has me the most disappointed is Anderson. It doesn't surprise me, by the way, that he's not been well. To me, he's not acceptable for what you went and did. Watching that performance in the second game of the series was, I just want to throw up my mouth. You spent money on this. This is what you spent money on. Really? It's frustrating to see.
It's hard to be disappointed when we set the bar really, really low. I think Jared and I were, when that signing happened, our bar was like, hey, remember 2 years ago, he had a 5 ERA. Like, he is a Dodger prodigy that went to the Dodgers, had 1 year, and now all of a sudden we're giving this money. So, I mean, we set the bar really low, and I don't even think he's hit our bar. Like, I think Jared and I were like, hey, if he throws up like that like 4 ERA, it's like, hey, eat some innings, fine. He hasn't even hit that bar yet.
Isn't that detrimental though? If you think about it, look at the pitching in this division. Even with the Astros being where they are pitching with guys in the IL, their pitching is still relatively solid. The Rangers, guys in the IL, but they've been solid. You have the Mariners, who basically are running 3 deep right now, getting some great pitching. Got hit hard by the Yankees this week, but overall, that's good pitching from them. I don't see how this pans out well for the Angels because basically what you're describing is an ace and a bunch of 4s and 5s is how they're performing right now.
And even the ace hasn't pitched as good as like you would want him to. Like he's getting through his outings, but he's not going deep into his outings. You're seeing like him struggle through 6 innings with 107, 108 pitches, which is great. Like that he's able to get through 6 even on his like, not an on day, but you're not getting that Garrett Cole outing out of anyone where it's like, just give me the ball, give me the ball back at the end of the game after I strike out 15 and give up 3 hits and we win the game 7-0. Like we just haven't had that this year. And that's what you were talking about earlier with the bullpen. It's like you get one of those outings, every other week. That helps the bullpen so much because now you're not having to use a Silseth or a Davidson or a Bachman to throw 3 or 4 innings. You're not having to use Webb to go 2 innings in an outing and things like that. So they really desperately need one of those outings from somebody. We don't even care who it is right now. Just somebody just take the ball and don't take it back until the game's over.
They need it more consistently. Again, it's the same thing that we're seeing basically a bunch of 4 and 5s. And they're handling their business, getting 5 innings, sometimes 6, working, keep the team in games, but that's not going to carry them into October. And that to me is what's concerning me. You're going to wear. They are wearing out the bullpen and putting. It leaves Perry. I say Perry because I don't really think Nevin's the guy. It leaves them in the place where they have to make more decisions we don't want them to make.
Yeah.
Jared, come on, throw something in there, dude. You've been super quiet. Like you're that weird dude who sits in the corner and kind of just lurks. This is you are part of the podcast. You know that, right?
Yeah, I mean, you need to go deep into games as a starting pitcher. I think we've talked about this a lot, and it's very true. I mean, to harp on Tyler Anderson, yeah, he's underperformed what we thought he was gonna be. Even like, and we really set the bar low for him. It was like 4 or 5. Just throw 5 innings a game. We're good there. And he's barely been able to do that. The one thing that gets me is they've pitched well. Starting pitching to a certain point. It's been 1 bad inning. It feels like a lot of the times. Like Ohtani had 3 straight starts where it was 1 bad inning, 4 straight starts where it was 1 bad inning, right? I mean, it's been that 1 bad inning this entire time. And you know what that makes it, I've said this all year. It feels like a high school team that is just that just doesn't play good fundamental baseball and gets in their head so much. it takes one bad inning. Like they still have, it feels like just not playing good 9 straight innings. Like we see 9 innings consecutively between games, but like we don't see 9 straight, like a one game where it's like they played a really good baseball game. It's been, 1 or 2 bad things, some hiccups, some errors, and then they, end up losing those games. Like,
but Jared,
yes, go ahead.
Who's responsible for making sure those fundamentals are prioritized every day, every inning, every pitch?
If you were asking this, and I got the doggo here, but if you were asking me this last year, I'd say Joe Madden runs a major league style team where he lets his guys do their thing. This year, that is a fantastic question. I don't know whose team this is. Is it Phil Nevin? Because Phil Nevin, I don't think, like, knowing who Phil Nevin is and knowing like his background and that competitive, like the competitiveness that Phil Nevin brings to the game, he wouldn't allow this. It doesn't feel like, right? I mean, like, Phil Nevin, the player, that's not who he is.
Whose team is this? Because it sounds like you're saying it's not Phil Nevin's team.
Does it feel like it's Phil Nevin's team?
No, it doesn't feel like it's his team. I'm not convinced he's a great manager, but I mean, you're talking about a guy who was very competitive, and he was an old school player who would never stand for poor fundamentals.
Phil came into the staff as the defensive coach. Like, his job was to run the defense last year before he took over as acting manager. So, like, the fact that you're hired to be the defensive coach and your defense sucks, it's hard to say it's his team. Like, and I know it happens all the time. You look at football, some guys, some DCs, just like they come in and their defenses are bad, whatever. But like, this wasn't who he was. Like, the Yankees were pretty good when he was there. Like, they did things decently.
Can we agree that when Phil Nevin and Marcus Thames, I don't know if they were together, but when they were with the Yankees, very similar team to what the Angels have now. A couple of superstars, a couple of really good pitchers. They had a better bullpen. We've always said that. That's the thing that separates the Yankees. They have a dominant bullpen. They always have had a dominant bullpen. Very similar hitters, especially last year. I think the offense, if you look at the lineups, they were very similar offenses last year. You had Aaron Judge, who was stupid good, and the Eagles had Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout, obviously not for the whole year. And then you had just a bunch of no names after that. So in all retrospect, what's the difference between the Yankees and the Angels?
I mean, better pitching.
Brian Cashman lets his guys do what they need to do to get things done. That's what it is.
So by default, you're pointing towards Perry.
Absolutely.
Being Jerry Jones.
Absolutely.
I mean, that there's no evidence to the contrary, but I would ask politely, what is our actual physical evidence that it is, other than what Joe Madden said in his book and so on and so forth?
So you read things that Madden said on top of the TAM and stuff, where it's like, hey, we got to use the bullpen this way. You're seeing the bullpen being used similarly to last year in the way that Joe was talking about, where like Taman said, hey, this guy's only allowed to throw this many pitches before he needs X amount of off days, things like that. So you look at it and you just kind of deductive reasoning here. You're just like, well, if he said this is what we're seeing. It's probably closer to what he's saying. I'm not saying that Joe was 100% honest with everything. Maybe there were some things that, he embellished a little bit to make it sound a little bit better for him. But, I mean, A plus B equals C right now.
I think it also comes down to, and by the way, I was playing devil's advocate. I'm actually with you on this.
No, I totally understand.
I think it actually comes down to this. We know how analytics thinkers think. We know how people like Joe Madden thought. And Joe Madden was a guy who trusted his instincts. He managed game long enough to know what to do, where to go, how he wanted to manage it. Are we seeing this team managed by a guy who is behaving like a baseball manager who knows the game and runs the game? Or are we seeing it run? Are the actions by someone who is focused solely on the numbers, situational stats, basically the analytics? I think what we're seeing is analytics. Because there's no baseball logic in some of what we're seeing. There's no baseball logic in leaving Chase Silseth in for another inning when you saw how he actually looked the inning prior. And I'm not cracking on Silseth, by the way. There's just days you don't have him. This is not a crack on Silseth. I'm still high on him as being a part of this team. It's just in that moment, he wasn't his best. You don't put him in there. Jared, jump in, man.
I mean, when you look at it, I mean, just one more point to add on to that, and then we can bounce out of here and let everybody go. But 2, 3, 4 in the lineup, what do you expect that to be? Trout, Ohtani,